It's Tuesday evening and it's 6 p.m. UK time. This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I am Saad in Southeast London, and joining me as usual is Gregory. Gregory, how are you?
Hello, I'm well.
Okay, good. Here I'm in London and it's dark now. The weather's been uh, not too cold, but mild. How is it where you are?
Just like London.
Okay, very good. Welcome, listeners, to the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And we have a topic for discussion, a new topic for discussion each week. The topic tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? And I'm sure you've been listening to the news, what is happening. Uh, the topic has come from, you could say, from that, what's been happening. So you are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message, in the Light of Truth, by Abdushin, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, the topic we're going to be discussing tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Listeners, as I mentioned, the topic we've chosen tonight, peace and violence. I'll keep it brief, just reduce it to that for now. As you know, let's say just less than a week ago, this war has started in Ukraine, and let's say it's caused quite big news, obviously, but it seems to have affected the whole world, even though it looks like only 2 countries are at war. But somehow the whole world seems to be involved, and it has brought up many issues, you can say. And so, obviously, although we are not into discussing politics, but we do care about, life and human activity. So this is obviously very, you can say, unfortunate and very sad that people have come to this, come to fight here, but it also has brought many things with it. So we're going to explore that tonight. So as I said, the topic tonight is, I'll give the full title, which is Peace and Violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? So Gregory, as usual, I decided to go and check in the dictionary the meaning of the 2 main words in our topic, which is peace and violence. So I looked up the word peace first, and it says, peace, freedom from disturbance, tranquility. It is in the dictionary as well, a state or period in which there is no war or war has ended. So again, Gregory, would you like to say anything on that definition of peace? You're on mute, Gregory, just to...
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, many thanks for the question. It has always been a big challenge whenever that expression peace is used. And many say peace is the absence of violence. And as many people there are, they have their own impressions on what peace could be or should be. But each personality wishes to be able to do things undistracted. Each personality wishes to pursue a particular goal such that that goal will come to fruition. As long as that person realizes that just as he or she is pursuing these particular goals, these noble goals, there are others whom, like him or her, are doing the same. So when peace is mentioned, it must be a state where the goals which we are pursuing, which goals are of high morality, is such that it does not bring the other person, or it does not oppose the striving of the others, whom, like us, is striving for that which is noble. So when you get to that state, it becomes live and let live. Just as you yourself are striving to build up in accordance with the aspirations of, or in accordance with the laws of nature, in which, as a neighbor, it is one for all and all for one, then all the activities in that scenario are peaceful.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer and picture that you painted. Immediately, you know, when you think of what you just said there, that peace is not for one person, it's peace for everyone, really. And so immediately, yes, you mentioned about having goals. Yes, I have a goal, you have a goal, other people have a goal, and you don't want to disturb each person's pursuit of their goal. So in a way, people could say, we don't live in a vacuum. There is something else around us. So you've got to be considerate of all these other people and their goals, and not only of your own goals. So you can't ignore that you're living in that environment. So, and obviously, if when you think in this way, things become easier. Well, it looks like, okay, I need to consider that when I'm doing that, and I mustn't disturb others in pursuit of my goal. And why? And it applies to my neighbors as well. The people around me. So it sounds all very, straightforward, but somehow in the real life, things, don't always work in a peaceful way, as we are seeing. So yes, thank you for painting this picture. Now, the second part of the, well, not second part, but just the other part of the title is violence, or includes violence, peace and violence, as we've said. So I looked at also in the dictionary, Gregory, and the meaning given there for violence is behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. There's another part to the definition, but I will not go there. So I'll just repeat that. So this is the meaning in the dictionary for violence, the meaning of violence: behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Again, Gregory, would you like to say something on that definition?
Like we just mentioned in the case of peace, whatever behavior a person carries out which does not acknowledge the peaceful aspirations of another, be it in material things or non-material things which are visible, such one will classify or categorize as violence. For sometimes violence is not seen with the physical eyes. Many times the tendency towards that which is violent must have been born deep within the person who is unable to express himself or herself. And then all of a sudden, without due reflection, without due respect for one's neighbor, turns to force, to destruct, or force, it turns to force in order to put forward his own views. So in these scenarios, one can already see whoever does not follow that advice to love one's neighbor as oneself is not peaceful. At the same time, one can take it further when that advice is not carried out in deeds, then most likely violence is the accompaniment.
Thank you again, Gregory, for the picture you're painting there. Now, of course, this topic is very general in our title, and although it's coming from, a particular situation that is happening now, which is war in Ukraine, and but as I said, it has brought out many issues, and which we want to explore. So, Gregory, as you said, that people have a particular, goal. Each person has their own goal, and in this case, there are neighbors here who have their own goals, and obviously there's a difference of opinion, you can say. Maybe that's a mild way of putting it. A strong difference of opinion is probably the better way. So strong that it actually has led to violence because they couldn't come to an agreement with each other that, okay, what can we do or how to resolve it? But in the end, it seems one side thought, no, they're not going to listen to me. I have to use violence. So again, going to the topic tonight, Gregory, it says, peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? So
one can already see that anytime you have a person trying to enforce peace through violence, that person becomes the aggressor. That aggression must have arisen either through wounded vanity. So when one is referring to as aims, aspirations, and another one has aims and aspirations which don't tend to agree. And then you have the case of violence coming in. Each personality must ask themselves, what is the motive? So it is the motive. Which motive lies behind what has been expressed? It is that motive which is the key. For if the motive is to be able to live peacefully with others, then violence should not occur. One thing which must be very clear to any personality is that a union between whatever persons, whatever groups, or be it also in a state, can only occur on a voluntary basis. Any genuine union must be voluntary. Any genuine union can never, ever be forced, be it in marriage, be it in friendship, be it in whatever. Only through good examples, virtuous examples, can one attract another through these good examples, such that many will emulate that which is virtuous from the other person. Then, if along the line a union is agreed upon, then it must come on a voluntary basis. Such unions are resilient, are able to weather the storms. But should a union be forced, then before long, one will find that that which is the force will only make the participants go quietly in their own way of doing things. So it will breed all form of resentment, which resentment will cause terrible misunderstanding and terrible warfare sooner or later.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer. And there's one thing, we haven't got to this picture right now, but the way we have started our discussion is we've been assuming that if there are two parties involved in making peace or union or even violence, we have up to this point it was understood, or let's say assumed, that there are two parties of equal, let's say, strength, equal, similar thinking. Somehow, they're somehow on the same wavelength, even if they disagree. What I mean is that they're equal in other ways. And as you know, with this particular war, there's one country which is more militarily stronger, with Russia and Ukraine we're talking about, than the other. However, this is, we are talking about principles here, in a spiritual understanding. So, but there are these other factors which are part of the situation, which we can't ignore either. So even we could say, Gregory, as we have done in many discussions before, people of different maturity, so if all these things are taken into account with regard to peace and violence, and look, let's say, we use this as an example, not with Ukraine right now, but not to say that it can only apply to that one. It can apply to any situation, like you said, even a couple, a relationship like that. Something can happen there, with this thing, violence possibly there from there as well. So my question, Gregory, on that is, what you have said up to right now, if I were to say, what about the two sides of parties being of different maturity, let me say it this way, or different understanding? How can, is it possible to have a peace in that type of situation?
very sadly, in the scenario which you are referring to, it is the more mature group, or in the case of a couple or a few individuals, it is the more mature personalities who suffer for the inner worth of a person is dependent on the type of understanding that you show to your neighbor, just as Christ in his example did. So whenever you have groups who clamor for war, they already exhibit their gross immaturity. For were they matured enough, then they would already have seen that there are other ways to engage in this particular matter. For just as they themselves have challenges in understanding the other person, so also the other person has challenges in understanding them, where the other person too engage in violence to make himself or herself understood, then it shows that he or she, or whatever group, is so immature. That means he has not disciplined or has not sort of purified himself to such an extent as to understand the challenges of the other. A very simple example. You have in a class children who need to learn a language. And these children find it very difficult to understand this language, to understand their teacher. If it is assumed that the teacher is more matured, will the teacher not find a way to reach to these pupils to understand what challenges they have? Should the teacher then go into violence to beat them up or to crush them? One must not assume that because one has the so-called might, therefore they are automatically right. Because you find a situation where people, through such thoughts, reveal their immaturity, because they can only see violence. And wherever you have such violence, then the darkness, that which is evil, rears its head.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this answer, Gregory. I've got much more to ask you. Just before I do that, I just want to tell the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uprushin. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? Peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? You are welcome to join us with any questions or comment by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. We are also broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1. Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. Again, the number 1 space live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day. Again, go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. Again, the number 1 space Grail Message space the topic of the show, which tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? And another website you can listen to us on is zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. I'll spell that. Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Gregory, we talked about, let's say, war or violence between two sides. Just now we talked about the two sides having a different understanding or maturity. Another thing, Gregory, is you can say the motivation, because you can have, let's say, don't want to mention names here, but let's say we know it also from history. There can be a tyrant ruling a nation, and then he wants to dominate his neighbors or just conquer, let's say, for whatever reason it might be, conquer the lands around him. And those are the weaker nations, let's call it. And they're not able to resist because the one who's the tyrant has a much stronger army, whatever it happens to be, militarily stronger. And so the motivation, Gregory, it could be, like we said, there were in the earlier question, it looked like there was a dispute between the two sides, but it could be something different, Gregory. It could be somebody who wants to be like let's say, imperialist ruler who wants to, like a tyrant, wants to rule a bigger world than what he already has. In that situation, Gregory, you can't think of the word peace there. It's like you don't, as the weaker nation, it's like you have to, no matter what you can reason with the other side, it doesn't really matter. The other person is so domineering and dominant, they can just overrun you. So is it possible to have peace in that situation, or should you just accept your fate that there's nothing you can do about this situation?
It is possible to have peace if one strives for it. In the scenario you just mentioned, whoever needs peace and harmony must prepare himself or herself or as a group for battle. The battle of vigilance. That is the key. The battle for alertness. For when one is vigilant enough and plans very carefully in that particular scenario, one is able to perceive to a very clear extent the intentions, the motive of another. And even at that stage, is able to divert those erroneous or ill motives before it takes on form materially. So yes, it is possible. And looking at the history of men, there have been scenarios of that nature. Those who engage with such thinking only expose their weaknesses, whether it be Nero, who was in charge of Rome, who sets Rome on fire and accused the Christians because he himself was emperor of different other civilizations. It must be realized that whatever victory which they claim they have won are only Pyrrhic victories, because before long becomes evident that such a victory was not based on voluntary submission to the rule of others, just like you have in the case of slaves. Only that which is genuine, or that which is done voluntarily, that which has been examined, not only materially, intellectually, but also intuitively, only that becomes genuine. Because those who are involved with such unions show respect, show commitment, show trustfulness, show diligence, show courage, show compassion. For only these virtues we hold because they lead the personalities to the highest, whereas others, like vices, which many a leader hold, the vice of pride, of greed, of envy, of lust, of gluttony, of slothfulness, and because they think in their own delusion of self-delusion, they can now enforce it on others. They only do that as if they are sitting on a keg of gunpowder, which will be set alight at any moment. In that particular scenario, they themselves have to be watchful every second, because deep within is the uncertainty which accompanies that which is not genuine.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And you said, well, my question was about, even sort of, it's a little bit slipped my mind, like my actual question, the last question I had, but basically, when I was talking of the tyrant, trying to, let's say, control nations around him who are weaker, and how peace can be maintained. And then you mentioned that those, in quotes here, the weaker nations would have to be alert, so I just want to follow on from that. Does it mean, Gregory, that there's, let's say, a quote also, or a proverb there, one who wants peace should prepare for war? So does that mean, Gregory, those other nations, although they may not be wanting war, or they're more wanting to have peace, but they need to prepare for war? Is that how they need to be alert, that that they are prepared, so that when somebody strikes, that they can, they're ready to resist, so they can defend themselves? Is that how you prepare for peace, by preparing for war?
Well, that expression, for those who want peace must prepare for war, is a noble saying which applies to every scenario. However, the interpretation has been narrow and wrong. For those who wish peace, to be able to make progress in their lives, they must first and foremost search for that which is not right within them. That means they must be able to fight against the darkness within themselves and also around themselves. The fight with the darkness within oneself, this has to do with one's weaknesses and faults. Not only that, the wrong tendencies which many tend to carry almost everywhere. These are faults within themselves which they must fight against. At the same time, there are also those, what one may refer to, darkness around you. For many have entered into agreements or union with others, and they allow such to have an adverse impact on them. So when you yourself do not, in the first case, clean out or purify yourself of that which is not noble, at the same time, there's the tendency to go with people who have ignoble tendency, then the likelihood is that you easily yield to the onslaught which comes from the outside. If, however, you, in your efforts, ensure that one is always vigilant, in purifying those ignoble thoughts within you, and also you are also aware of those external forces which many people copy without due understanding and fight against that, then one is more or less vigilant internally, vigilant externally, and that being the case, you are in a position where you can deal with these challenges. For you will know where to have allies. Even the worst case scenario of whatever a dictator you might have there, you will know how to weave your path to ensure you yourself and those around you are able to live in peace, even when you have your neighbor who hasn't matured to such an extent as to be able to live in peace. He or she may have resources. He or she may have resources that will be able to crush you. But you, in your personal discipline, in your vigilance, are able to divert that attention, which attention is critical in order for one to achieve victory. It becomes the case of David versus Goliath. The intuition will always win.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for that. You've reminded me of something that is written in the Bible about Jesus. It's in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. It says there, this is Jesus, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. There's actually a bit more than that. It is said, and I'm just trying to, I don't have the full quote with me right now, Gregory, but it was like a surprise when that was said, Gregory, because everybody thinks that Jesus has brought a message of peace, and then and all his words, when he look at them, we think of him that he's bringing peace. But here in this, what appears to be a contradictory statement, and people wonder if it's even true that that's actually what he said, because apparently it's only in the one gospel and not in the other gospels. So I just, if I can just get the whole, just want to get that quote fully. Let me just find it, one moment. So just to repeat that, Gregory, it is from Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. And I'm just looking that up as I speak. Apologies for the delay. Here we go. Right. So this is, as I say, Matthew chapter 10. And, right. Okay. Do not think that I've come to bring peace to the world. No, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I came to set the sons against their fathers, daughters against their mothers, daughters-in-law against their mother-in-law. A man's worst enemies will be the members of his own family. And then it goes on, I will carry on, Gregory. Whoever loves his father or mother more than me is not fit to be my disciple. Whoever loves his son or daughter more than me is not fit to be my disciple. Whoever does not take up his cross and follow in my steps is not fit to be my disciple. I'm just going to stop there, Gregory. So I've realized that is aimed at the disciples, but it's still a message there which seems a bit, let's say, out of line from his message of peace. So can you explain what he was saying in these words?
The message of Christ has always been the same with the natural laws, with the laws of creation, with the divine laws. He himself, the personification of divine love, made it very clear in the Lord's Prayer, in which he summarized how man should live. He himself spoke of the truth, which truth is what one may refer to as the representation or the embodiment of the divine will. It was only through the laws of creation that the human personality came into existence. Therefore, to be able to continue to exist, the human personality in his or her activities need to resonate or to harmonize with these laws of creation. So when the cross is referred to, it is the cross of truth. Which cross of truth? When the human personality swings within the cross of truth, that personality is able to rise. Whereas on the other hand, if he or she deviates from the swinging of this cross, which cross expresses the divine will, he or she is unable to rise. So what he brought is the key, which shows how a human personality needs to be able to live with his or her neighbor, to be able to live in peace in nature, in peace in creation as a whole. So he kept repeating the same thing again and again. That is, do not separate the word which he brought from himself. Well, whoever tries to separate the word which he brought from Christ then makes the mistake of thinking that they know better than him. In all these cases, the human personality must strive to understand aright. When he's talking about the cross of truth, the cross of truth, through which the human personality came into existence.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I also got the thinking that it is about your conviction. You must, he was speaking to the disciples who was the closest to him, and so they should understand him the best, you could say. and so they should have a real conviction on who Jesus is and what his task is, and they are supposed to, you could say, be his representative. So if they are not clear or having a conviction, deep conviction in what Jesus is and what he's brought, then of course, how will they act? And so when he said, I'm not here for peace, it's in this context. It's like they have to fight within themselves, just like what your previous answer you were talking about there. There's a fight within ourselves to overcome our faults, and maybe he's warning them, his disciples, to overcome their own faults, so that they stand firm in the conviction of what Jesus is and the truth, the mission of Jesus. And so when the disciples come across some obstacle or obstacles and in difficult situations where they mustn't waver then. So maybe that's what he's referring to, that at that time there wouldn't be a peace, because there would be complete disagreement, you can say, with what Christ has brought and what I don't want to even use the word enemy, because they may not be enemy. They may be, there could be enemies that are trying to bring them down, or it could be some people who just don't understand and could be misleading. And I think that this is just my own, you could say, understanding from those words.
It must be looked. What you have said is correct. At the same time, one must understand when conviction is referred to. Conviction only comes through searching, rigorous searching in deeds. Whatever impressions you have been able to gather, you put it into practice. Only through activity, again and again, continuously, can one strengthen oneself in one's beliefs. So, when it is said to love your neighbor as yourself, unless that is put into deeds again and again, then you will find that if that is not done, no matter the scenario, one is lacking in personal conviction. So, yes, it is true, but conviction is not something which now you are convinced. Later, another scenario will change. That is not what is meant. And to a large extent, Paul, the disciple, was the one who showed it in his further activities.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushi. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? I'll just repeat that. Peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? That's what we're discussing tonight. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number one.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one again, space live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one again, space Grail Message, space the topic of the show, which tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? And of course, you can listen to our previous shows. And also, we are broadcasting on zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. And I'll spell that ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1. Again, the number one. Gregory, we just talked about conviction, which, you know, it cannot be, let's say, it's continuously, we know from the Grail Message, weighing and examining. That's how we come to conviction. However, Gregory, and I know we discussed earlier about preparing for peace by preparing for war in the sense of overcoming our faults. So, you know, becoming strong in that way. But let's say again, Gregory, where there's a tyrant who is strong, and then there's the other party who is weak, and then the tyrant decides to attack, and we know definitely in a military way that the weak one cannot, let's say, win that war. So, and there have been examples of this, Gregory, obviously throughout history, and many times the weak one just, it's like you just have to accept the consequences of that, because that's the situation you're in today. You know, if you had been, as you said, alert or preparing long time ago, you would be more prepared, and then of course you could handle your enemy when they are strong. But say that is not the case situation, Gregory, and we find in history, like I say, maybe the tyrant, you know, continues to rule you for 30, 40 years, and then somehow there's a collapse of the tyrant over your, let's say, unless we're talking about we being the weak country, and then somehow that's what happens, and then you get your freedom again. So my question, Gregory, you know, this is the spiritual discussion program, and maybe, Gregory, that is how we learn in this situation, because you can only deal with the present. You know, if you were prepared at the beginning, you would be strong enough to deal with your enemy who is stronger than you. But when you are not in that situation, you just have to accept, I guess you can fight. So my question is really, Gregory, if you believe in your conviction, should you just fight till the death, or should you just allow to be ruled, like I say, allow them, and maybe it'll be 30 to 40 years, possibly that's what has in history it has been sort of seen, when the other side, in the end, the strong, so-called strong ruler somehow weakens, and then you are able to sort of get your freedom again. So let me say the question on that, what I want to ask here. Gregory, should one fight because of your conviction till death? Just whatever happens, the consequences happen, or should you just say, okay, what is more important is my survival. I will just have to bear it, and then as time goes on, almost like knowing from past history, I will have earned my freedom by having to, be ruled in this in this harsh way. So is that the spiritual? Would you say that is the spiritual path if you are in this situation?
In the first case, there were some wrong assumptions. He said one is strong. The one who is strong is the one that is disciplined. The one who is strong is the one that has wisdom. The one who is strong is the one that has courage. The one who is strong is the one that has patience and persevere. It is the weak one who has not learned to control itself, who introduces violence. Immediately there is a challenge. So it is not true to say that because one has so much arms and swords and grenades and weapons to destroy, that person is strong. Many times, that person is weak. For if that person were strong, then it would know how to engage with others. It can understand the challenges others have. Will that personality say because they do not understand their parents, they will then blow their parents to bits? Will they say because they don't understand their children, therefore they have to destroy their children? Why is it then that they must destroy others, enslave others? Because they cannot understand that just as they themselves wish to pursue that which is noble, so also the others. So the concepts which many have built, considering that because one has ammunition, one is strong, is wrong. For that personality who is strong will pursue the path, even if for a time it has to change his or her tactics. But the goal is unflinching. Whereas the one who is weak, who just considers that all you need to do is throw force into it, and therefore they have won, that is the weak one. For that personality has not examined, that person lacks personal conviction, because sooner or later he or she will find that it is him or her who will now have to be on the alert for those whom you have claimed to conquer. Because it will now be you are unsure of who is on your side and who is not on your side. So for that which has to be long-lasting, then there must be genuineness. The strength which you yourself just mentioned is only apparent, because you find that it's only a temporary measure, even if that measure lasts for a considerable amount of time. So one should distinguish between those who are strong, who pursue their goals, and allow others to pursue their goals, which goals are the virtuous goals through which they can achieve that goal through either wisdom or humility or compassion. As we all know, you cannot give that which you do not have. If you do not have compassion, how can you have compassion on others or show to others? If you do not have courage, how can you show courage? If you do not have modesty or diligence, then you can't show this by example. On the contrary, if all you understand is force, is destruction, it is that which you will exhibit here or hereafter. But the question you pose is, how can one live with such? It is true that in that particular scenario, that which one intends to achieve, one will have to hold back for some time. The goal must be unflinching. In that particular scenario, there must be patience. At the same time, searching for other ways to achieve one's goal. Whilst the so-called stronger one, the only way it can achieve its goal is through violence, which violence will not last for long. The other personality cultivates patience, cultivates perseverance, cultivates alertness, cultivates vigilance. These, of course, the so-called stronger person does not cultivate. For what is referred to nowadays as they have arms, there are a few others who, it's very simple invention, can easily cripple that which is material. It is not for us to go into such things. What suffices is that the human spirit, no matter the scenario, is able to learn lessons from it, which lessons it can make use of here or hereafter, such that in the case of a reincarnation, if the lessons learned are dwelt on one's intuition, then it takes it over. And when it incarnates again, is able to make use of that experience to ensure that vigilance is the key, alertness is the key, patience is the key, at the same time harboring earnest, good volition. Whereas the other personality who has resorted to crude force and has not cultivated these virtues which the human personality needs, we have to repeat that lesson. He or she may now be on the receiving end, but the human personality has to be on the alert, for there is not enough time. This coming back, that means this reincarnation does not go on forever. For as is well made clear in the Walk in the Light of Truth, we are here in the world of matter, which many a person can easily allude to. And in the world of matter, the human personality is granted a definite period to cultivate through these virtues, that or those talents which have been sowed into it. It means it has to allow to come to fruition. So, if the human personality keeps wasting its time, unable to cultivate these virtues, which virtues are subsequently needed for it to exist as a being, for it to exist continuously, to be self-conscious, that time allotted to it may be over. In that case, because the time is over, that opportunity to come back here is now impossible. For this world of matter will have to undergo disintegration into its primeval substance, which therefore means all those who are still stuck within this world of matter will have to undergo spiritual disintegration back as spirit gem. Means the time granted for that maturity has run out and they have gained nothing. That is the danger which the human personality must avoid. Therefore, it is high time to move away from might, force, violence justifies the name.
Thank you, Gregory, for this answer. I've got actually so many angles in regard to this Ukraine war situation, and I want to touch on them because it's too much to go into everything. But I want to give an example, Gregory, of let's say you could call them victims, or so let's say one side here started, you could say, the war in physical terms, but then once the war starts, there are consequences to the well, basically consequence on everybody's side. Let's say people are getting killed, Gregory, and those people getting killed, all of them have relatives, and there's a immediate grief for those who have died, and then there's also others who, because of the war is continuing, there's a risk that more people will be killed, and so relatives of who are, let's say, outside of the country are worried about their relatives who are in the country where the war is taking place. So there's this constant worry, you can say. So there's the physical killing that we are hearing about, but there's other knock-on effects. It's not really the best way to put it, but through the consequence of one decision, there's many other consequences. That's the way I can put it, and they're quite devastating for people. Even if somebody doesn't actually die, there's all these worries generated to the families. And I want to look at it, Gregory, again in the spiritual context, like we've been discussing so far. When this type of situation occurs, Gregory, there's like worry, like I said, worry or sadness. How can one put oneself at peace? What I mean by that is again, I'm trying to say, Gregory, should one accept the situation that this is happening, and because of, let's say, war is happening, people die and there's a suffering, and even there's, as we know, refugees are moving, and that means they're dislocated, so they need food to where they go. So I know I'm sort of diverting a bit, Gregory, but what I'm saying is, when all these, you could say, on the surface it looks like there's a material happening, taking place, but there's much more emotional impact from it, and that can have quite an impact. And also, let me try to focus on this, Gregory. So if that's happening on the material level, on the emotional level, should the relatives who are, let's say, at a distance, but they're sort of suffering it with their fellow, the people who are, say, in the direct firing line, how should they handle this? That's what maybe the best question I would like to say, Gregory, when somebody is in that immediate danger.
Basically, the question is, how should one handle these particular challenges?
Yes.
As one has always handled challenges, this is why it's necessary for one to have gained conviction. So this question is not tied only to those who are involved, directly involved, but is pertinent to every human personality. For wherever you yourself have sensed that there is suffering, unless you immerse yourself in the suffering of others, then you yourself cannot come to compassion. For compassion only means suffering with others. In that particular case, then, in accordance with the laws of creation, or with the laws of nature, there is a reciprocity, because you are then forced to ask for help, sensing that there is some goodness, there is some force, that which is good, that you could cry out to. However, one must have, in these dire situations, put oneself in a scenario where, through vigorous activities, one is able to recognize, through one's intuition, the way forward. So each personality, through their personal conviction, which lies in the movement on their spirit, they are able to recognize in their own way how they must move forward. So you cannot say the intuitions of this the recognition of this must be used entirely for the other person, to each in accordance with his or her nature. That is important. Such that sometimes many of those who are in reality, in fact, undergoing this personal suffering, because you have immersed yourself in their place and sort of experience what it is like. You are able to send them good thoughts, good intuitive thoughts in support of the scenario where they are, as with every challenge. And you'll be surprised, the union of such good thoughts is able to help one or the other along the line through either increased strength or a way is fashioned through which they can be out of such a scenario. At the same time, one should not forget the so-called aggressors. For these aggressors themselves are human personalities. Sometimes human personalities who have been enforced to carry out such brutalities, either willingly or most of the time unwillingly. Human personalities who have their own challenges. Although they see that some of the things they have to do is wrong or is against their personal conviction, but looking back, many can see or can sense the brutal force bearing down on them. Those ones must also be taken into consideration. However, one should be realistic. To be realistic only means to always look at the situation and plan. Plan way, way ahead. For you do not wait to fall into injury before you make a plan. In case there is injury, this is how I need to proceed. So the situation, although very dire and causes a lot of grief, many a personality who knows how to handle situations like this will gain from it. That does not decrease the culpability of those who triggered this type of debacle through personal envy and greed. At the same time, it should serve as a lesson to everyone to ensure that what they themselves have suffered in the hands of fellow human spirits, they themselves must never, ever precipitate such suffering on others. It is that law which has not been obeyed by the perpetrators. That is what causes envy. That is the source of greed. In a final analysis, it is all vanity. For when you talk about piece of land, this piece of land, which the human personality is permitted to occupy in order to develop and mature. That piece of land, they met it here, and they have to leave it here. So, when that which is granted you is not sufficient for you because you haven't put enough effort for the personal development of that neighborhood, then greed comes in, envy comes in, lust comes in.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this answer. And, it just shows we must always look at the bigger picture. I know it's this easy words to say, but it's necessary for us to know that we are spiritual beings, and yes, we are going through a earthly material experience, which is suffering in this case, let's say. But as you mentioned at the beginning, Gregory, there's a goal, but let's say the higher goal is what we must become aware of. And yes, we need to eat, we need to live on this earth, but we must see the context of all these experiences, and then all these worries that I was talking about with families and suffering would be put in the right context, and the peace can come even inside this difficult, very a situation where people are really suffering. So peace can still come when you can put yourself in that bigger context. It may not be easy, I can see that, but it has to be, it must be seen in that light. So dear listeners, just to remind you, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you're interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. Also, you can listen on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. And you can listen to the recording of this show and even up other previous shows. Go again to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? And also one more website you can listen to us, which is zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. Zeno, that's ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1, the number 1. Now, Gregory, in this modern world, the social media plays a lot of role, and they call it, there's propaganda, disinformation out there, and that's how we access our information about the, at least let's say with news, you can say, and through that we are influenced, to believe, or even when we read the press, papers and so on. And Gregory, those tools or channels are not in our hands as individuals. They're in the hands of governments and other organizations or bodies who might have their own agenda. What I'm trying to say, Gregory, is people can tell us things which is false information, and then we accept it, let's say, trusting it, and not really knowing what is behind it, and then believe that and make our decisions accordingly. So yes, let's, especially with this, looking at this current situation, let's say one side telling their version of the events or what is happening, that's the other side is to blame, and the other side saying giving their version, and that's again the other side is to blame. So and then you're wondering, well, let's say some people don't even get to hear both sides, they just get to hear one side. So what I'm saying, Gregory, is there a way that we can know something is the truth? I mean, I guess the real way, Gregory, is to be the actual witness who's physically there to see it in front of your own eyes, but that's only immediate experience, it still doesn't give you the whole story. So I'm just wondering, Gregory, is there, with this world that we live today, can one really know that one is getting the right picture to make an assessment? Because we said we have to have conviction, which is by weighing and examining, as we always say. But when we are having to weigh and examine lots of, let's say, disinformation and lies, how can we be sure, how if we are weighing and examining correctly?
You use the word weighing, or you use the expression weighing and examining correctly. First, there is the need to differentiate that which is a fact from that which is not a fact. And secondly, there is the need to strive to grasp that the motive which lies behind the facts. So the first is the filtration to get the facts. The second step is the motive behind the facts. That is part of weighing. That is part of examining. With the facts are the deeds. With the motive is the intuition. So that which is intuitive is consistent. One cannot say you have an intuition which is self-contradictory. That is never the case. However, the challenge has always been how each personality is able to obtain the facts and also the motive behind these facts. That is what differentiates one from another. Instead of accepting all that has been thrown at you without any personal examination. Because in such a case, many a lie can be thrown at you and you just believe it without making any effort. That in itself is indolence. Indolence on the intellectual, indolence in the filtration to get the facts, and indolence even on the spiritual level. So as long as one strives along the right direction by through little events, filtering out the facts, understanding or grasping the intuition behind the facts, in little things, in small things, then when this scenario arises through which so many distorted concepts are thrown at one, because in humility, in simplicity, the personality has established himself or herself through these little facts or through the little things, you will find that the so-called big things are made up of these little things. Then that gives you confidence, because diligently one has always examined. And with diligence in the attestation that these are the facts, again and again, in attestation that these are the intuitions, confidence is built. And with confidence, the human personality can now go forward courageously. It is important that prior to this, there have been personal examinations. If, however, one had not always done that, then you don't expect that person all of a sudden to be in a position to just know like that. In fact, if you are the one who is always, going after the facts, that which is false is likely not to approach you, because you must have built mechanisms within yourself to differentiate. No, this is not it. Because if this is where it could have been the results. Because you yourself are sure. That is one way of going about all these things. So in this so-called world of social media, what you have, many are too happy to be engaged in gossip for that effort, which should have been used for personal improvement, in diligence in examinations, in skillful examination. That effort is now thrown into gossips and sensationalism, just because it satisfies the human intellect. One just follows it. No personal examination, because it seems too difficult for one to go into. So it is just accepted. That is the challenge the human personality must face and withdraw itself from such. So whatever the situation, as long as one is prepared to strengthen oneself in vigilance for that process of examinations, is also vigilant, then subsequently wisdom arrives. For one now has a sensing of some guidance, which guidance has always been there, which guidance helped to nudge the human personality to that which is noble. But if one does not make the effort, that will not happen.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I'm wondering, Gregory, wars have always been happening in history, in our history of human history. So I'm just wondering, and there's always a different variety of human beings, different maturity. We have said different people have different motives, so many things like that. So maybe, Gregory, there can be one community. Within that community, you can have peace, but can there really be peace amongst mankind on this earth? It's like it's too much difference is within the humanity for us to have, let's say, peace. It might be a peace maybe for 5 years, but something will happen and then the peace will be broken. So my question is, Gregory, it's so complicated to say this, but can mankind have really peace on this earth, like a lasting peace? Yeah, can it be possible to have a lasting peace with the way the human beings are?
Of course, it is possible to have a lasting peace. It is not a scenario where you think, well, you do anything you like. No. Why it may seem that it's impossible is because many still haven't yet come to their realization that there is an order. There is an order in nature. Creation itself is very well ordered. This order has been brought about only through the laws through which the human personality came into existence. And wherever you find this war, this suppression of others going on, it only means that the so-called aggressor has not yet refined itself to grasp that just as they themselves are striving after that which is noble, which is important, so are other people. The lack of understanding arises. The laws that govern, which laws themselves bring peace and harmony. It is that lack of understanding that causes conflict. Therefore, should the human personality strive after peace and not conflict, then it must understand what this wisdom that brought nature into being, this wisdom that brought creation into being, the wisdom that arranges things in such a way that there will be peace, that grants each personality the opportunity to improve itself. Once the human personality strives to grasp it aright and follows that path diligently, before long, compassion will awaken within it. Humility will awaken within it. So also will be courage. So also will be modesty. But because they haven't thought about it, and they are still hooked up to envy, which has arisen out of indolence. You always try to see what the other person has. What has been granted to you, you haven't looked at it properly. Were you to examine it aright, you will find that there is so much which has been granted to you. But no, in your weakness, which you call strength, you now wish to subdue the other person. In subduing the other person, you yourself cannot take the wisdom, the patience, the understanding of that person. On the other hand, you sink deeper, because the initiator of such weave threads, which threads become knots, which will then chain the personality in such a way that he or she is unable to rise to have finer concepts. So that in itself is not progress. In order to ensure that there is peace, there is harmony, the works of Christ, which stresses love of one's neighbor as himself, is there. As if that is not enough, the possibility now exists in the work, which work talks of the light and also talks of the truth. This works talks of the light, of how human spirits came into existence, what their purpose is, what their tasks are, how they have to live here or hereafter in order to mature in accordance with the law through which they themselves came into existence. And therefore, you now have a picture of creation, which picture is like a map, which shows you where you are. It shows you the tasks you need to perform to get to where you need to be as a spiritual personality. This work, now titled In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message of Abushim, has been made very clear. The efforts being made by those who engage with it is to have personal clarification in the first instance, in such a way that in associating with others, they may share that which they themselves have come to know.
Thank you so much for this answer and explanation, Gregory. We come to the end of our show, listeners, and I'd like to end with my reading, which I do quite usually, from the Grail Message. It is the first page, you can say, of the Grail Message titled For Your Guidance. The bandage falls and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Approaching. Dear listeners, that is, as I say, the foreword of the Grail Message. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion tonight. Topic was peace and violence. Can one enforce peace through violence? We'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Gregory, is there anything you want to say before we to say goodbye?
Wishing everyone a beautiful week.
And same from me, listeners. Thank you for being with us tonight. May peace be with you, and God bless you.